you're watching this, you probably heard that Neeko's getting a mid-scope update and you're probably panicking right now, but it's my job to reassure you guys that this is not a rework. This is a mid-scope update. This is not going to be like Tark turning into the new Tark, old Aatrox, new Aatrox, Scion, or even the new Udyr coming. This is a mid-scope update. Some recent champions like Sivir, Ahri, Olaf, Swain, Janna, and Taliyah. Other than Taliyah, they all play the exact same, with the only outlier being Taliyah, who plays the exact same, except she became more of a control scaling mage where she used to be like an early game burst mage, but I really doubt they're going to change Neeko into control mage. I'm pretty sure she's going to stay as a burst mage. So this video, we're just going to be talking really quickly about what I think Riot might do to Neeko and what I'm hoping for. So the first one is what I hope. So to start off, I think Riot's going to be really focusing on Neeko's passive and W, because they're going to really want to focus on making Neeko better at what she already is supposed to be doing, right? If you think about other champions, like for instance Ahri, and they gave her extra dashes, it really made Ahri feel more like an Ahri flying around assassinating people. Olaf keeping his ulti forever made it so that when he got in a fight, he could never lose it as long as he stayed on his target. Same with Swain ult. These champions basically Riot made it so they play more towards their fantasy. Neeko's fantasy is using her passive for tricks, using her W for jukes and tricks also, and combination of her passive and her W to do crazy things. And that's where I think Riot will really hit Neeko. Where I think that they will change Neeko for the worst part is probably to get these passive changes. It'll obviously buff Neeko. They're going to have to take some changes somewhere else. They will probably nerf either damage on her Q or maybe some root duration, which obviously as a support main, I hope it's not too much, but that's probably where we're going to be seeing the hits for the new passives updates and the W updates. This is all hypothetical. This is just my speculation. I have no insight or any knowledge on what's going to happen. This is just what I think that's going to happen. So for starting the passive, this is like top of the notch. If they did this would be crazy, but I think it'd be really cool if when Neeko used her passive, if she got all the stats from the champion she turned into. So if she turned into a tanky Mundo, she would legitimately gain that much HP. She would get all the Mundo's resistances. So this Mundo has 91 armor, 71 magic resist. I would also, as Neeko, even though I'm building squishy, I would get all that. If I turn into a mage or an AP champion, I would get all their AP and all that stuff. And if I turn into an ADC, I would get their stuff. Now you might be saying, Dog, this is going to be really OP. I'll explain to you how I think it could be balanceable. So what I would do is I would make it that whoever you turn into, the passive breaks after you take 10% of their current HP, and the damage Neeko takes underneath the passive is equal to the same percentage. So if you're as Mundo and they break 10% of your current HP, you'll turn into Neeko and you will have lost 10% of your current HP that was underneath that passive. And the reason why this is balanceable means if you turn into a full HP tank, it's going to be hard for them to break that. And remember, you can't cast spells when you're doing this or else it'll break the passive. But then if you're a really low tank, and you take 10% damage, it'll be very little to break it. Likewise, if you turn into a full HP ADC, you could start the team fight off with a lot of attack speed AD using your empowered autos and playing like an ADC, and when the enemy finally breaks your passive, which again 10% of your current HP as an ADC is very little, it'll reveal you as Neeko and you can use your regular combo. That being said, if you turn into a 1 HP ADC, it would break probably from a Morgana W, right? And it'd be really cool. And also for the AP champions, I would make it so that your next spell with passive up gets them bonus. So if you have like a Nidalee up and she has 1000 AP and you throw a root, you get 1000 AP root. If you have an ulti, you get 1000 AP ulti, whatever. Again, you might be thinking this is OP, but like I said, they're going to be doing changes to Neeko, and they're all going to be, there's going to be stuff they're going to give us, they're going to take. So that is my like creme de la creme. If they did that, that would really fill the Neeko fantasy, pretending to be allies and actually getting benefits of being an ally, becoming a little tankier as a frontliner so you can get into the middle of the fight and get your ulti out before you lose all your HP right away, or play as an ADC in the back kiting and using your W to try and make sure the enemy as best you can't break your passive, or turning into a mage and just going for your big one-shots. This is the stuff I'm looking for, to be honest. That's like the big stuff. So smaller stuff, what I think they could do is some more smaller stuff to the passive, because I really think Neeko's passive is what's going to get hit. There's been other riders on stream I've seen that said that they think Neeko's passive is one of the worst in the game. So one of the things is I would say is the passive cooldown. To start off, if they do what I said before, I think they should actually increase their passive cooldown. It should become like even a 30-second cooldown. But if they keep it kind of how it is now, I think that it should really lose the cooldown completely if you break it yourself. It feels terrible if I'm Nidalee and I use a root and it goes on a full 20-second cooldown. If you break it yourself, I think it should just not get a cooldown. If you get it broken from an enemy, I think the cooldown should also scale with CDR, so you can get its cooldown a lot later. It feels really bad that it can be broken so easily and that it's like a high cooldown. So that's a couple things. And another thing that I would finally probably change the passive if Riot doesn't do any of the other things, is if they don't do the idea I had where you turn into the champion and get all their stats, which again I think would be really, really cool and fit this fantasy of being a chameleon who's like actually turning into allies. And if you think it's really OP, look at Viego, look at Silas ult. Like, this isn't crazy OP. You can't cast your spells. You're just effectively getting really tanky for a little bit, but you can't use any of your spells as a way to just trick enemies and make them believe you're actually a tank. The last thing I would do is probably, if they don't do that though, I would put a threshold. If anything, there should be like a Guardian threshold amount of damage that takes to break your passive, so it doesn't break from like a Zyra auto, a Zyla Pant auto, even a Morgana W. You should have to break from something a bit more. So those are the things that I would probably change to the Neeko passive on the top of my head. If you guys have other ideas, you should let me know in the comments, and who knows, maybe a writer will see it. And let's go on to some W changes, where I'm going to go into practice tool because I just needed this custom game to use my passive. Okay, so we went over some possible passive changes, and like I said, I think the next most likely one to get changed will probably be her W and potentially ulti actually also. So I'll start with Neeko's W. So right now, it's a good ability. Honestly, I think W is one of the best abilities in the game because you can use it to face check and things, but it's also not very believable. It always walks in a straight line, it goes till it disappears, and it's kind of predictable. I think there's ways Riot could change this. I know a lot of people want Riot to make it so you can fully control your clone for the full duration. I'm not saying it won't happen. That could be what they do, but I feel like that would be the wrong direction for me personally, because it would be really hard. To use that well would be really hard. To control your own character and the clone would be really hard, but it would definitely give the best fantasy of where you could turn into a top laner and use your clone and make it believable. So I think in general we're probably going to get more controllability of the W. I think the most likely one would be that your W goes to wherever your cursor is. So if I put my W in this bush, instead of the clone running and then running straight through the bush, and it's obviously not the real person, if I can turn into a jungler, tap W in the bush, and the clone runs to the bush and then stops running and just stays still, this is a very likely change that could happen, I think, for this ability. Not that far out there. Remember, it's a mid-scope update, which means none of these abilities are going to get changed. They're not going to get new effects or like look any different really. Talia got a slight difference in how her ability looked, where they gave her an extra row on her ground, but it was really just the same ability extended, right? I doubt, so all Neeko's abilities are going to stay relatively the same, but they might get tweaked. So I think being able to add more control into the clone would be a good idea. Maybe instead, because I will say it's kind of hard to juke if you were trying to juke like this, right? You see how I flicked my wrist and I put a W this way and ran this way? If the clone just ran a bit and then stopped, it means that to do this same juke, I'd have to like W way out there to make it even believable. So another idea is Riot could make it that when you tap the W again, it stops running. So I could do something like this, and then I would right now tap W one more time, and it would stop the clone in the bush as I tap W. That could be a possibility, but I think adding more control to W is a very, very believable way. As I said, I think they're going to try and make Neeko's fantasy of being a trickster chameleon more, and I think through the passive and the W is how it's going to be done. The last thing I think that they could benefit Neeko with a change would, a lot of people can complain. Oh, actually, one last thing is the W also, if you didn't know, if you W an ulti, the enemy sees you casting ulti while Neeko's invisible. Most low elo players, and probably you're welcome if you didn't know this in chat, if you W ulti, the enemy team still sees you casting ulti. It's not invisible, so trying to go stealth route and then go for an ulti like this, the enemy sees it coming. So another easy thing they could do is make it when you stealth ulti, the ulti is invisible while you're stealth. That could be one more thing. Anyways, for the final one is the ulti. So with Neeko's ulti, the problem with Neeko's ulti is this item, the ulti forces you to go into the middle of the enemy team, self-CC yourself, and you basically kill yourself. Now, to be honest, in Riot's fairness, I think when this champion was designed, I think they designed her to be like an auto attack based champion with her empowered autos, but an AP build. But with the rework to the mythic items and stuff, like all the items that are good for that kind of went away. I think Riot initially expected it to be like you're sitting back and you're like peeling, and if they dive into you, root ulti them and keep fighting them in your ulti. I don't know what I did to bug there. But the problem is how Neeko and Realistic is played is she's going and she's flashing into the middle of the team and killing herself. So I think there's a bit of a misstep. And also, by the way, for AP on hit Neeko, I would love to see if this Riftmaker, just a suggestion that I would think is if this Riftmaker got attack speed on it, it would make it a lot better for a lot of the champions who build it. Either get rid of the ability haste completely and put attack speed and attack speed mythic, or get rid of some of the health and put attack speed and attack speed mythic bonus. Just a thought, all the champions who build this item would love attack speed on it. But anyways, enough about the AP on hit Neeko. The way you could change the ult is, for one, the jump in the air animation drop could be faster. You could make it a longer channel up and then boop boop, right? So instead of it being this and now it's up down, it could be channel, 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 up, down, right? And it could be like a lot quicker, making it so that the time that you're self-CC'd is a lot smaller. They could also make it like a Zyra ult where you cast ulti somewhere on your screen and it goes out and it goes out and it drops. Again, people might think that's OP, but they would just reduce the damage on it and the ratios. If you think that's OP, then talk to Zyra, because Zyra's is a knockup, which is actually better than stuns because tenacity doesn't affect stuns. So making this a range ability would actually not be that unquestionable. But those are like the ideas I have how they could potentially change the ulti. The last thing with the ulti that I want to talk about is a lot of people think that the ulti should get a shield at the start instead of the end. The problem with that is if you use your passive and you ultied and you got a shield randomly, the people would know, oh, why is this passive like this? Why does this Caitlyn randomly just get a shield? It's obviously a Neeko ulting. So if they ever did do the route of ulting at the start, getting a shield at start, they'd have to make sure the shield doesn't show over the passive. Which another cool thing could be if the Neeko ulti shield you get at the start and the actual shield stops the enemy from being able to break your passive while they're hitting the shield, making it cool synergy where you could passive Neeko ulti, the enemy team hitting you wouldn't break the passive because of the shield, and you can get a big ult. So these are ways that they could change Neeko's passive, W, and ulti to make her a more modern, up-to-date champ. Like I said, most likely when you buff somewhere, you have to take somewhere else away. Probably will reduce the base damage on her Q by a bit. They've buffed the base damage a couple times back to back. Adding some more trickster stuff, they'll probably take away some of her damage. Maybe take a bit of duration off of her root, which again, as a support main, I hope that's not the case. But I think most likely we're going to get more utility out of the passive, more utility out of the W, maybe make the ulti a bit easier to actually use, and probably the nerf is going to come into the damage / CC duration on her basic spells, making her a bit less of a burst one and done combo mage and more of a trickster, trick the enemy and make them outplay themselves champion. If you guys have any ideas that you would like to see Riot do to Neeko for this mid-scope update, comment below. Again, hopefully I've calmed you guys a bit. With the mid-scope updates, all the champions play the exact same, but they're just more suited to play in like their play style, where like Olaf can go in and he can never get kited out, where like the old Olaf could go in and you could like Zanya's wait for his ulti to expire and then he can't do anything, right? So I think Neeko will be the exact same champ as she is now, but kind of better in most ways probably is what I would assume. So like, comment, subscribe. Again, it's my birthday today. Or did I say that? Did I cut that out? Maybe it was a different part, but it's actually my birthday today. So come to my stream and wish me happy birthday. And peace.